This is historic Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, where in 1875, a man named Colonel Lewis Clark had a horse race. That race has become the greatest tradition in American sports today, the Kentucky Derby. Hi, I'm Liam Cutchins, and we're here on a chilly Sunday morning, the 17th of March, 1991. It's hard to imagine on this Sunday morning without a lot of horses out on that track that in less than 2 months, the greatest thoroughbred racehorses in the world will be battling it out right there in the 117th consecutive running of the Kentucky Derby. But all this wouldn't be possible had it not been for one man, Colonel Matt J. Winn, who not only saved the Kentucky Derby, but saved horse racing in Kentucky. Now, rumor has it that the ghost of Colonel Winn prowls these grounds, and what better day than St. Patrick's Day to go searching for him. So that's what we're going to do right now, and the best place to start is over at the Kentucky Derby Museum. Let's go on over. This is the section of the Derby Museum that's dedicated to the memory of Colonel Matt Winn. There's his photograph on the wall, the bronze sculptures that he commissioned of Zev and Black Gold, winners of the 1923 and 1924 Kentucky Derbies. There's even his favorite chair. Now, of all places that he might turn up, I think this just might be the one. Oh, Colonel Winn, you startled me. It's good to see you, sir. I see the rumors are true. You're right. This always was my favorite chair. So what can I do for you, young man? Colonel Winn, is it true that you actually owned Churchill Downs at one point? I was approached by Charlie Price, the racing secretary at Churchill Downs, in the autumn of 1902. He told me that if I didn't buy Churchill Downs, well, they'd have to close the place up, and that'd be the end of the Kentucky Derby. Now, I'd been to every Kentucky Derby since 1875, and I thought it was a great institution, not just another horse race. But I told him, Charlie, I just can't help you. I'm a merchant tailor. I'm not a horse player. You're just going to have to find another customer. He was adamant. So I went to see some close personal friends of mine, and we put together a syndicate. Took over in the fall of 1902. I thought you must have always been in the horse business. On the contrary, my father was an Irish immigrant, came to this country at the age of 13, started a wholesale grocery business out in Portland. And I was on the road for 10 years working in the grocery business, buying and selling produce. Took me through every back road in the state of Kentucky. I'd probably still be in the grocery business if it weren't for my tailor, Ed Langen. He propositioned me in 1887, said he needed a partner with some capital that could sell. So we went into business together. He set up shop here in Louisville. I went to New York and bought the woolens and the materials, brought them here to Louisville, and then went out on the road taking orders. And I went as far west as Los Angeles and El Paso. Of course, Los Angeles wasn't a big city in those days. It was just a little bitty town. There wasn't any Hollywood or movie industry. There wasn't even much irrigation or water. So things were quite a bit different in those days. I'm just curious, sir. Do you recall what you paid for Churchill Downs? Certainly. We paid $40,000, and that paid for all the real property. The real estate was under lease from the Churchill family, of course, but there was a grandstand, the original grandstand, which was where the backside is now. It was 285 feet long. There were the barns, of course, and the track, and Colonel Clark had built a clubhouse where he could entertain his friends. And you began changing things immediately. Well, the first improvement that we made was to build a new clubhouse where we could entertain our friends and where they could entertain, something new at Churchill Downs. We wanted to appeal to a much wider audience, of course. We went to an architect, and he drew up plans. When the contractor came in with a bid, though, we were astounded. He wanted $20,000. Well, our friends said that they all wanted to be members of our club, so we sold memberships. We sold 200 memberships at $100 apiece, and so the clubhouse was paid for even before we built it. Well, what other initial changes did you make? Well, I'll tell you. After the spring meet of 1903, we balanced the books, and we showed a profit for the first time in Churchill Downs history. And every year since then, good years, bad years, wars, depressions, Churchill Downs has never failed to show a profit. And I'm sure your position at Churchill Downs put you in the know when it came time to place a few bets. When I took over as vice president and general manager of Churchill Downs in 1902, I stopped being a horse player. I've never bet so much as a cigar on the outcome of any race since that time. This applies to everyone who works for me as well. Whether it's a line judge, a secretary of racing, or a starter, no one was allowed to bet on the outcome of the races or to give a tip or the impression of giving a tip. This applies to my family and servants as well. Colonel Winn, I've heard it said that you're not only the man who saved the Kentucky Derby, but you may be the one man responsible for there being horse racing in the state of Kentucky today. That's very kind of you to say. But actually, the racing of fine horses is one of the oldest pastimes known to man. Well, horses are even more competitive than people, if you can imagine that. And it's not so much that people are against horse racing itself, it's just that because the outcome of each contest happens so quickly, it lends itself to wagering. And it's the wagering that some people object to. Unfortunately, without the wagering and the zest of the contest, there just wouldn't be any crowds. And without the crowds, there wouldn't be the money to maintain the track, much less show a profit. Well, I hope we'll be able to see you again here sometime. Could be you'll see me here next St. Patrick's Day. I'm rather fond of this old chair.